You can put 20 impressive metrics on a slide and still have an investor forget your company 5 minutes later. Give them one powerful story, and they may remember it for years. Step into any venture capital pitch, and you will find a founder presenting a wall of raw numbers to highly skeptical listeners. The assumption here is that accurate financial models and market sizes are sufficient to secure a check. This approach relies on the rational world paradigm, the belief that business communication operates purely on logic. It assumes an investor absorbs objective facts, weighs the evidence impartially, and makes a calculated decision based on mathematical merit. This chart reveals the cognitive flaw in that assumption. Human memory for isolated statistics fades rapidly. Within a single day of hearing raw numbers presented without context, an audience experiences a 73% drop-off in recall. A highly favorable customer acquisition cost might win a brief debate while the slide is on the screen. But because an isolated number provides no visual or emotional anchor for the brain, it vanishes from memory before they even reach the parking lot. To understand how to bypass this memory decay, we look to research conducted by Dr. Jennifer Aker at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Her studies isolated the variables of human recall and produced a precise measurement. Information delivered through a story is up to 22 times more memorable than facts presented alone. Consider a metric like 40% quarter-over-quarter growth. On its own, it is sterile. But when a founder describes the initial customer struggle, the specific discovery of a new market inefficiency, and the resulting surge in adoption, that identical 40% figure is attached to a logical sequence of events. The human brain did not evolve to store spreadsheets. It is wired to navigate and retain sequential narratives. The data itself retains its value. The numbers remain the essential cargo holding the weight of the pitch. But storytelling is the required vehicle to successfully transport that cargo into an investor's long-term memory. In the 20th century, communication scholar Walter Fisher formalized this concept into the narrative paradigm. He argued that all meaningful human communication requires a storytelling structure to be fully processed. Modern neuroscience confirms Fisher's theory. Researchers at Claremont Graduate University mapped the specific chemical reactions that occur when we listen to a sequence of events. Following a narrative washes the brain with oxytocin, a neurochemical that directly produces feelings of empathy and trust. Scanning the brains of subjects listening to raw facts yields a very different result. Only small, isolated regions related to language processing illuminate. The centers responsible for emotional response and visual processing remain entirely dormant. But a structured story engages the whole brain. Researchers observe up to a 5-fold increase in neural activity. This simultaneous activation across multiple lobes creates a more distinct neural pathway, making the information easier to recall later. Utilizing a narrative in a pitch is not a creative indulgence. It is a proven, biological mechanism to ensure that financial data is both retained and trusted by the person holding the capital. However, a compelling narrative without hard evidence is simply fiction. Venture capital demands structural proof. Fisher identified 2 specific criteria required for a narrative to be considered rational and believable. We can visualize this as 2 pillars. First is coherence. The story must make internal logical sense. Here, growth charts and unit economics mathematically support the founder's claims, creating structural integrity. The second pillar is fidelity. The narrative must align with the investor's lived experience and historical precedent. If a presentation lacks internal coherence, the investor is confused by the contradictions. If it lacks external fidelity, the investor feels actively deceived. Securing funding requires both the strict logic of the data and the recognizable truth of human experience. Structuring a pitch requires laying out these elements in a specific sequential arc. A founder must introduce the initial problem, detail the friction in the customer experience, present the solution, and immediately anchor it with hard evidence. This progression acts as a form of sense-making. The founder contextualizes the market timeline, providing the specific evidence the investor needs to understand why this problem requires a solution right now. The arc peaks at the future opportunity. The historical data and early traction metrics serve as undeniable proof that the founders possess the capacity to execute their vision at a global scale. The best pitch doesn't force investors to choose between emotion and evidence. It makes the evidence part of the story. Numbers can prove that something happened. A story can make an investor understand why it matters. Mastering this synthesis changes the room's dynamic, as the investor begins to see the business not as a set of risks to manage, but as a credible mechanism for generating outsized returns. Before your next investor pitch, don't just ask whether your slides contain the right numbers. Ask whether those numbers are telling one clear story. You don't need to buy anything to start improving that today. But if you're preparing to raise venture capital and want a structured system for turning your story, traction, and numbers into an investor-ready presentation, I've linked my complete $497 VC Funding Blueprint Kit in the description. Inside, you'll get a VC-ready 16-slide pitch deck in Canva. The AI financial narrative engine turns 5 business numbers into investor-ready financial storytelling. You also get a 16-page slide-by-slide VC instruction guide, plus 16 VC-quality AI prompts, and a bonus 10-slide high-ticket B2B sales deck. Everything includes lifetime updates and full ownership with 0 recurring fees. If you're serious about raising capital, the complete $497 VC Funding Blueprint Kit is linked in the description. If this video helped you understand why great pitches are remembered rather than simply understood, subscribe. Don't just give investors information, give them a story they can repeat.